Hey guys, this is Non-Lammers of Invoked 101. Welcome back, and today we're taking a look at another new deck that is, at least new for me, and that is Satellarknight. So this is something that I've had sitting in the binder for a really long time, and then I took a trip to Iowa and I ended up picking up a second Deneb and looked over what all I had for it. Only needed a few things, so I decided to finish it. But real quick before we get into the deck profile, down in the description there's a link to our Patreon if you feel like supporting us there. There's a link to our merch, so if you feel like picking up some Invoked 101 shirts or stickers or whatever, that's down there as well as our Discord. So if you feel like joining our Discord, that's down there in the description as well. Without further ado, we're going to set the spells and extra deck off to the side, and we're going to talk about the monsters. So the first one we have is Satellarknight Altair. Sorry, wrong guy. So Altair is really cool. His effect is, if this card is summoned, you can target one Tellarknight monster in your graveyard, except Altair, special summon that monster in defense mode. Also, monsters you control cannot attack for the rest of the turn except Tellarknight monsters. You can only use this effect of Altair once per turn. So a cool little kind of Monster Reborn type monster for the deck. And then we have probably the most important one, which is Deneb. And Satellarknight Deneb has the effect of, if this card is summoned, you can add one Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand, except Deneb. You can only use this effect of Deneb once per turn. So there's your Stratos for the deck, just a very cool card. And they're all light warrior level 4s, and then they all have an effect on summon. After that, we have triple Unicahali, who has the effect of, if this card is summoned, you can send one Tellarknight card from the deck to the graveyard, except Unicahali. Then we have two Procyon. What he says is, if this card is summoned, you can send one Tellarknight monster from your hand to the graveyard. If you do, draw a card. So there's a neat little one. Then we have Satellarknight Beetlejuice. And his effect is, if this card is summoned, you can target one Tellarknight card in your graveyard, except Satellarknight Beetlejuice. Send this card to the graveyard. If you do, add that target to the hand. A bit of recovery there. And then we have Satellarknight Sirius. His effect is, if this card is summoned, you can target 5 Tellarknight monsters in the graveyard, shuffle all 5 into the deck, and draw 1. And then lastly, but also pretty important, 2 Vega. Yeah, one of these isn't a Vega because it didn't show up in the mail when I needed it to, but definitely need to be playing 2 of this guy. And his effect is, if this card is summoned, you can special summon one Tellarknight monster from the hand except Vega. So, pretty cool lineup of guys we have here. So that's it for the Satellarknight stuff. Satellarknight monsters. Then we have one Thunder King, one Jizukiru, one Godarla, and one Radiant. So these are just some kaijus, and the reason we're playing these is because of one of the extra deck monsters, and I'll talk about that when we get there because it works. It's like the big thing. There's an extra deck monster that like bounces everything back to the hand, and so what you can do is you can kaiju your opponent and then bounce your own kaiju back to your hand so you can reuse it later. And that was the theory of playing these. So that's it for the monsters. We're going to talk about the spells and traps. Going into them, we have double Satellarknight Skybridge. This thing is really cool. So it says, target one Satellarknight monster you control, special summon one Tellarknight monster with a different name from your deck, and if you do, shuffle the targeted monster into the deck. While that monster special summoned by this effect is face up on the field, you cannot special summon monsters except Tellarknights. You can only use one Skybridge per turn. After that, we have triple double summon. I found that this might be pretty useful for this deck, and considering that it's all about summoning stuff, so I figured I'd stick this in here and just try it out for now. It just gives you an extra normal summon. After that, we have one copy of Rhoda for obvious reasons. Double Pot of Duality. You don't really need your special summoning on your turn, especially if you can get stuff into the graveyard early on. So Pot of Duality is pretty useful in this deck just to get your combo pieces. Because Satellarknights are one of those decks that do kind of play on the opponent's turn a little bit. One Upstart Goblin for the extra draw, one Monster Reborn, and one Dark Hole. And that's just for the obvious reasons. For the board wipe and revival and all that good stuff. So, setting those aside, we have the traps. First up, we're playing triple Call the Haunted. So now, Satellarknights really like playing continuous traps because you can bounce them back to your hand and reuse them later. And Call the Haunted is no exception to that, especially since they all have effects on summon. So being able to summon them on your opponent's turn and then bounce these back and then reuse them potentially again is very useful. So Triple Call the Haunted, easy staple for this deck. The next one that has been a easy staple for the deck since like inception is Fiendish Chain, a negate that you can reuse and reuse and reuse. Fogblade is in a similar position, so if you feel like using Fogblade instead of Fiendish Chain, feel free to, but I like Fiendish Chain. It says activate this card by targeting an effect monster on the field, negate the effects of it, and also the face-up monster cannot attack. When it's destroyed, destroy this card. So it's very similar to Fogblade, and Fogblade does sit on the field. So if you feel like playing that over the Fiendish Chain, go for it. After that, we have an Oasis of Dragon Souls, and I feel like a lot of people don't know what this does. So it says activate this card by targeting a monster in your graveyard. Special summon it in defense position. It becomes Worm. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. So there we go. So it's just another Call the Haunted, really. And then after that, we have one Satellarknight Wave. So what this says, it says once per turn during your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, you can special summon one Satellarknight monster from your hand. So this just gives you more extra summons and whatnot. It's a really cool card. And then the last two cards we play are two Stellar Nova Alpha. And this is your counter trap for the deck, and it's a pretty awesome little counter trap. It says when a spell trap or monster effect is activated, send one face-up Satellarknight you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card, then draw one card. So, super awesome little piece of negation for a deck that really, really does need a little help. Especially like today, like in today's format, Satellarknights definitely need all the assistance they can get. So moving into the extra deck, we have one Satellarknight Deltaros. This guy is pretty cool. This is one of their Xyz monsters. He needs 3 level 4 monsters, and it says, while this card has Xyz material, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects when you normal or special summon a monster. Once per turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, then target one card on the field and destroy it. This card is sent from the field to the graveyard. You can special summon one Satellarknight monster from your hand or deck. So that's pretty useful. 2500 attack on a rank 4 is pretty beefy. So actually it has Dark Magician stats, 25-21. That's kind of funny. Just a very useful card overall. Being able to pop stuff and having your opponent not respond to your summons is awesome. Next up, we have the boy himself, Satellarknight Trivor. This is the main guy that you're going to be going into. He needs 3 level 4 Tellarknight monsters, and it says during the turn you Xyz summon this card, you cannot special summon monsters except Tellarknights. If this card is Xyz summoned, return all other cards on the field to the hand. Once per turn, you can detach one Xyz material from this card, send one random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. If this card with Xyz material is sent to the graveyard, target one Satellarknight monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So, not only is he a piece of revival for a Satellarknight, not only is he a mass bounce, but he also gets to discard a card from your opponent's hand, which is pretty amazing. Both the Satellarknight guys, I think all of the Stellar Knight cards are actually pretty decent. So, but yeah, just another awesome piece of utility to use for the deck. Next up, we have one Satellarknight Constellar Diamond, and this guy's set is a Wyrm, and it says 3 or more light level 5 monsters, and his effect is during the main phase you can Xyz summon. You can also Xyz summon this card by using a Satellarknight Xyz monster you control as Xyz material, except Constellar Diamond, and then you keep the Xyz material. While this card has Xyz material, neither player can send cards from the deck to the graveyard, and any card that returns from the graveyard to the hand is banished instead. During either player's turn, when an opponent's dark monster activates its effects, you can detach a material from this card and negate the activation. If you do, destroy it. Sorry about that, it has really small text. But yeah, so just awesome. It's kind of like a Necro Valley on legs, really, which is pretty awesome. All right, so after that we have Time Thief Redoer. If you don't know what Time Thief Redoer does, he basically just like dodges effects and banishes himself, and then lets you draw cards and return stuff to the top of the hand and gets effects based on the different Xyz materials that are under him. So he's just a really useful rank 4. He's also a level 2, not level 2, rank 4, so you can, that only needs 2 materials, so you can make him pretty easily. After that, we have Exit Knight. This one's actually signed by my cousin, because he thought it was funny. So, This guy's just a Black Rose Dragon, but as an Xyz monster. And then we have one Baguska. And of course, you can play other rank 4s. Dark Tellarknight Ptolemaeus is a really good one. I don't have one. I couldn't find anyone who had one nearby. And then Utopia Double is a really good one for this deck. Again, another card I didn't have. But if I had Utopia Double, I'd probably be playing it in here. After that, we only have 2 Link monsters for the deck, and these are the only 2 you really need. Hippo Shinigami and a Sold. Just both of them do... this one's really cool for just grabbing a Satellarknight that you already used for setup for next turn, and then this thing's just a buff to all light monsters. So, but both of them have the same arrows, and both of them help you set up plays. The unfortunate part, the only reason you really need 2 of them, though, is because you can keep bouncing them back to the extra deck with Trigger. So, which is the kind of unfortunate part, that you have to continuously bounce them back and then remake them. But it's not that big of a deal. So, but that's it. That's it for the Satellarknight deck. I think the deck is really fun. I think it's pretty cool. It's an older deck, and it's something that I've played against a lot. Just because virtue of one of my buddies picked it up, and then we had this guy who was like obsessed with playing like the best deck in the group, and he ended up playing this for a while. So it's been a deck that I've been pretty familiar with for some time, at least in its playstyle, and it's definitely something that if you feel like picking up a Xyz spam deck or a deck that's simple and trying to just get someone into the game, this is definitely a cheap little pickup. I mean, the deck really only costs you about, the Denebs are like $4 a piece, so you could probably pick up the whole deck for around $30. Anyways, tell me what you guys thought about this deck in the comments below. Again, down in the description, there's a link to our Patreon, our Teespring, and our Discord, so if you feel like checking any of that out, that's all down there for you. And I will see you guys in the next video.